Welcome back, Phil 301. Dr. K here. I hope you all are doing well. In our last video, we discussed an overview of some of the main topics that we're going to encounter in Ghazali's On Knowing Yourself and God. In this video, I want to discuss his account of or analysis of human beings. But before we do that, I want to highlight two important claims that he makes right up front in On Knowing Yourself and God, and which I want you to think about as you go through your readings and as you go through and listen to the sequence of videos. So the two claims that Ghazali makes concern the importance of self-knowledge. The first claim is that if you don't know yourself, you cannot know God. And the second claim is that if you don't know yourself, you cannot seek your own happiness. So if we assume these claims are true, an important question for you to ask is, who or what are you? And we can look at the several topics we're going to discuss in our section on Ghazali as Ghazali's answer to that question, what are you? Right? So one common answer one may give to that question, what are you, is a human being. And in fact, what we're going to look at right now is Ghazali's analysis of or account of what a human being is in more detail. Okay, so this is Ghazali's analysis of or account of or view of human beings. First, let's say that like Augustine and like Plato before him, Ghazali is a dualist about human beings. That is, he takes human beings to be created of two things or two substances, an external form or body and an inner spirit, which is a non-bodily or non-physical thing that he also calls the soul, the self, the heart, or the person. Now let's look at some of the central features which Ghazali attributes to each of these main parts of a human being and which he thinks distinguishes the parts from each other. Let's start with the features he ascribes to the external form or bodily part of a human being. So he says that it can be seen by the external eye, that's to say the eyes of the body. And that makes sense because he also says about it that being physical, it's part of the physical world, as is everything that can be seen by the eye, right? And so when we're talking about the physical or visible world, what we're talking about is the world that is extended in the three spatial dimensions of length, width, and height. It is that world that you see before you right now with the eyes of your body, right? So it can be seen by the external eyes or the eyes of the body, and that's because it's a physical object itself and hence part of the visible world. And he also says that it is a follower of the soul, or at least it should be a follower of the soul. So again, Ghazali's view is very Platonic. He, like Plato and Augustine, thought that there were two main parts of a human being, a bodily or physical part, and a soul or spirit, which is non-physical. And like them too, he thought that the highest part of a human being is the part that should rule. And the highest part is the self or the soul or the spirit, what Ghazali also often calls the heart. And lastly, Ghazali says about the external part of a human being or the body that it is a vehicle or tool of the soul. It is what the soul is to use to navigate around in the physical or visible world. So having discussed the features that Ghazali ascribes to the external form or bodily part of a human being, now let's turn to discuss the features that he ascribes to the inner part of a human being, which again, he often refers to in different names, such as the inner spirit, the soul, the self, the heart, or the person. The first thing he says about it is that in contrast to the body, it cannot be seen by external eyes or the eyes of the body. This is because it's not a physical thing. It lacks spatial extension. In the eyes of the body, they pick up spatial extension. They're designed to see spatially extended or physical objects. So the inner spirit is not known by the eyes of the body. Rather, it's known by inner vision or insight alone, what Augustine called intellectual perception. Now, the third thing that Ghazali says about the inner spirit is that it's not part of the visible world. And again, this is because it's not a physical object. It's not spatially extended as all objects that are part of the visible world are. And following on this, Ghazali says that the inner spirit, or the self, or the heart, or the person in the truest sense, has come to this visible world as a stranger or wayfarer. This is not the original home or the ultimately intended home of the inner spirit. And also, as Ghazali goes on to identify the true nature of the self, truly what you are, as being identical to the inner spirit, this is not where you originated from or where you truly belong or are destined to be. He also says, like Plato and Augustine, that the inner spirit is or should be the monarch of the body. It is what should rule within a human being. Next, of the inner spirit, he says, it's what knows and witnesses the beauty of God, has the burden of duty. That's to say, it's the thing that has moral obligations. It is what is punished, and it is what is either happy or miserable. So the subject of knowledge of God, the thing that has moral obligations and undergoes punishment and is either happy or miserable, is not the body, but the inner spirit. Lastly, and I alluded to this earlier, Ghazali says of the inner spirit that it's where the true nature of the self lies. In other words, it is what you truly are. So yes, while the inner spirit inhabits the body, you are a human being, because what a human being is an inner spirit or soul plus a body. But that is not what you truly are. You're only a human being contingently while you are inhabiting a human body. But that body could cease to exist, and thus a human being cease to exist. But you, the inner spirit, could still exist. All right, guys, so that's it. In this video, we considered Ghazali's account of human beings. We saw he took human beings to be composed of two main parts, a physical or external bodily part and an inner part, which he calls the inner spirit or the self, the soul, the heart, person in the truest sense. We went over various features and facts about both of the parts, which Ghazali thinks discriminate them from each other. And especially, we saw that when he identifies you or the self in the truest sense, it's not as a human being. He takes you in the truest sense to be the inner spirit, and you're only a human being while you happen to inhabit the body that you inhabit. In our next video, we're going to go into more detail on what Ghazali says about the inner spirit or heart. So I'll see you in the next video. Dr. K out.